Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. For today's video, we are going to be going through my October wrap up. I actually had a pretty good reading month in October, for me anyway. For the last few months, I've been averaging about 5 or 6 books read each month. But in October, I managed to read 8 books, which I know for some people is probably like half of the amount of books they usually aim for in a month, but for me, I am very happy with that. I've had all sorts of things going on in my life recently, starting a new full-time job, moving city. Reading hasn't been a huge priority recently, but I am trying to prioritize it again because it is something that makes me very happy. So in October I started trying to prioritize it again, and I'm very happy that I managed to read 8 books. I'm hoping in the coming months I'll be reading a lot more. I think in this stack we have a couple of 3-star reads, some 4-star reads, and even a couple of 5-star reads as well. So definitely a good reading month for me. So without further ado, if you'd like to hear all about the books that I read in October, then just keep watching. So the first book I read in October was actually an ebook. It was on Kindle Unlimited, and that was Their Vicious Darling by Nikki St. Crow. This is the 3rd book in the Vicious Lost Boys series, I believe. This series is a dark romance, reverse harem, I never know how to pronounce that word, retelling of Peter Pan, and I absolutely love this series. It may not be the best written, it may not be the most intellectual, but it is so much fun. I love throughout the series watching how Nikki St. Crow changes bits of the original story to make it her own. The books are incredibly smutty, and we all know I love a bit of smut. Basically, in the first book we follow Winnie Darling, I believe, who is a descendant of Wendy Darling, the original Darling. And in this world, every time a Darling girl reaches the age of 18, she is stolen away by Peter Pan and taken to Neverland. And no one knows what happens to these Darling girls when they are there, but they do come back a little worse for wear. Winnie's mum is actually quite mentally ill. She has not been the same since she returned from Neverland. And of course, at the beginning of the first book, we follow Winnie reaching her 18th birthday and being taken away to Neverland. And her experience is definitely a little bit different to the other Darling girls. She has a great old time with a lot of the Lost Boys. And the 3rd book I actually ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. I've given every book in this series so far 4 out of 5 stars. I just really enjoy my time with them. They're so much fun. The smut in this one was a little bit OTT at times. Like, you know I love a bit of smut, but there was bits where I was like, what on earth am I actually reading right now? There were some other characters brought into this one, characters that we know from the Peter Pan story, like the crocodile, but done in very different ways, and I just love watching this story unfold and cannot wait for the next installment. The next book I read in October was actually an audiobook, and I do think one of the reasons that I have read more in this month is that I've introduced audiobooks to my life. I'm definitely getting a lot more reading done just by listening to audiobooks, either when I'm playing games, getting ready, or even just lying in bed at night. And this one I sped through, and that is Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda. I actually ended up giving this one 5 stars. It is definitely a new all-time favourite thriller. In this one we follow Harper, who is a young woman living in Hollow's Edge, which is a very tight-knit suburban community full of lots of young professionals. There's not very many children there. It's like an up-and-coming modern neighbourhood. It is all about surveillance. Like, all of the residents all have cameras on their doors, and they have like a neighbourhood watch system, so if anything happens within this neighbourhood, everyone will check their cameras to see like who went past their door at certain times, and then they can find out who committed whatever crime it was. But there is definitely not a lot of crime because of this, and it's a little bit creepy. At the start of the novel, Harper is surprised to find a very unwanted person at her door, Ruby, who was sent to prison a year and a half ago for the murder of a couple in this neighbourhood. And now she's gotten off, she is believed innocent. She returns back to Hollow's Edge to live with her roommate again, Harper, and continue her life. And it's all very tense. No one knows if they can trust Ruby or if Ruby genuinely is innocent and just wants to continue her life. We don't know who we can trust in this neighbourhood. It is just so tense the whole way through. It's such a fast-moving novel. I love a thriller with tight-knit neighbourhoods like that, where everyone has their own secrets, everyone's keeping things from each other, there are affairs, there are all sorts of things going on. I just love trying to piece those bits together, and the twist in this one was freaking fabulous. I was actually playing Sims at the time when I was listening to this audiobook, which is one of my new favourite things to do. Play Sims and listen to an audiobook. And I literally had to stop, pause the game, gasped out loud and just sat there staring at the wall listening to this twist unfold because I could not believe what I was hearing. So yeah, definitely a 5-star read and a new all-time favourite thriller. Next up in October I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This was the September YA fairy loot book and I absolutely love this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It is the first YA fantasy I have read in a while and I absolutely loved returning to that sort of world. In this one we follow Signa, who is a young woman. She is 19 at the beginning of this novel, I believe, but she was orphaned very young and ever since she has been carted from guardian to guardian until she reaches the age of 20 when she will receive her inheritance. But death follows her wherever she goes and seems to kill off each of these guardians. So at the beginning of the novel, Signa thinks that death has it out for her, has something against her, and interestingly she can see and speak to death, which is one of my favourite things about this book. She can also see and speak to ghosts. At the beginning, her latest guardian is killed off and she is sent to Thorn Grove, I believe, to live with her uncle and cousins. And when she arrives, her female cousin is very gravely ill with the same illness that her aunt has just died from. And Signa then sees her aunt's ghost and her aunt tells her to come to her garden where she will tell her how she can save her cousin. And the story goes from there. This was just such a good YA fantasy. It was incredibly gothic and you guys know I love a gothic book. This one gave me Gallant vibes to begin with, it gave me Secret Garden vibes, and then it just completely became its own story. There's also a romance between Signa and Death in this and I just thought that was so interesting to read about. Yeah, absolutely love this, love the writing style. Cannot wait for the next installment because there is a sequel called Foxglove coming out, I don't know when, but I need it ASAP. Next up I listened to another audiobook and that was Win, Lose, Kill, Die by Cynthia Murphy. This one I wasn't too keen on. I did end up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. In this one we follow Jess, I want to say, who is at a boarding school for the best and brightest in the UK. It's set in England and she is part of the secret society at this boarding school, but at the beginning of the novel members of the secret society start getting killed off one by one and the police and the headmaster don't seem to be too bothered about solving this case. The headmaster seems to be kind of covering things up a little bit, so of course Jess and her friends take it upon themselves to try and work out what is going on in this boarding school. I was really enjoying it to begin with. It gave me huge Dark Academia vibes and I do love a bit of Dark Academia. However, the book then mentioned the fact that it was very Dark Academia, which completely ruined it for me. Like if a book tells me what it is trying to do by saying like, oh, this is so Dark Academia, it just completely spoils the whole vibe for me. It's just gone. The romance in this between Jess and her like love interest was ridiculous to me. Like if anyone thinks that teenagers actually speak to each other that way, I just don't understand. It was so YA, it was completely unrealistic. And I think a lot of people gave this book 5 stars for the twist at the end, but the twist for me just, I kind of just listened to it and I was like, really? Is that where we're going with this? Like, it just wasn't a vibe for me. So I did enjoy a lot of my time with it. It was a fun, fast read. I love a YA thriller, but unfortunately 3 out of 5 stars, more of your sort of like average YA thriller. Next up I read my favourite book of the month of October and that was Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. This is my first Kerry Maniscalco and now I'm obsessed. I need to read everything this woman has written. In this one we follow Emilia, who is a witch in Sicily, and at the beginning of the book her twin sister Vittoria is killed in a very gruesome, graphic manner. She is one of many young witches who are being killed in this way in Sicily at this time. So Emilia realizes that in order to solve what is going on, who is killing off these young witches, she must summon a demon to help her get her answers. And accidentally, she ends up summoning Wrath, one of the 7 princes of hell. She just wanted one of your ordinary, like run-of-the-mill demons, but she manages to summon this great almighty demon, and it's a wild ride. Obviously, these two sort of like resentfully team up to try and work out what is going on, and it is just such a good book. Like, I loved the writing style, I loved the feminist witchy vibes. The romance in this is everything. Like, I love an enemies to lovers, and this was one of the best enemies to lovers I have read because they were actually enemies to lovers and they remained enemies for most of the book. I mean, even at the end, there's a bit of a cliffhanger. It's still very much up in the air. I need to read the second book, but there are just too many enemies to lovers where they're literally enemies for like 2 chapters and then they like each other. This one is not like that. It is very angsty. It had me on the edge of my seat, and yes, absolutely loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. A new favourite fantasy. I need to read the second book ASAP. Next up, I read another book on Kindle Unlimited, and it was actually a graphic novel. That was American Vampire by Scott Snyder and Stephen King. And in this graphic novel, we have 2 stories, one written by Scott Snyder and one written by Stephen King, but we get sort of chapter about from each of these stories. Scott Snyder's story is set in 1920s America, which I love. The 20s is one of my favourite eras, so to see that written and to see the illustrations of it, it was brilliant. And in this one we follow a young woman who is like an up-and-coming actress, but she is then invited to this event and lured into a room with all of these old-timey European vampires who try to kill her. But thankfully she is saved by the original American vampire and becomes this new form of vampire. And we watch her story unfold throughout that one. In Stephen King's story, we have like a Western story, and this is all about the original American vampire and how he became the original American vampire and why he's different from the other vampires. That is a very vague synopsis, but I feel like that's all you really need to know going into this. I loved it. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the 1920s and Western vibes put into one graphic novel. The illustrations were amazing, like really horrific at times, and I do love a good horror graphic novel. I think there's either 6 or 8 in the series so far, and I think either 4 or 6 of them are on Kindle Unlimited and the other 2 you can only get physically. But I do think I want to start collecting them anyway because I did really enjoy the first book in the series, and I think it would be a good series to collect. So hopefully I will get my hands on the second volume very soon. Next up, I actually read an ARC, and that was The Dark and Dangerous Gifts of Dolores McKenzie by Yvonne Banham. This one comes out on the 6th of April next year, so I am very ahead of the times, but it was the perfect book to read in October. This one is a teen book in which we follow Dolores McKenzie, obviously, who has the gift of being able to see and speak and interact with ghosts. However, the older she gets, the more dangerous this gift gets, and it means that these ghosts or spirits can pass like through the veil into the real world. So obviously she needs to be taught how to use this gift properly and how to stop that from happening. So she is sent to one of the uncles to learn how to control and use her gift. And the uncle that she is sent to just so happens to live in a bookshop in Old Town Edinburgh, which, let's be honest, in October, it's the perfect vibe. Old Town Edinburgh, ghost story. What more could you want? And the story goes from there. I actually ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy my time with it. It was a very fast read. I absolutely loved the Edinburgh setting and the spooky ghost story folklore vibe, but I did feel like it had so much more potential to go further, and I know because it was a teen book it probably couldn't go any further, but because I loved the idea and the concept so much, I kind of probably would have liked to have seen this in maybe a YA or adult book and see it taken like that step further. But overall, definitely an enjoyable reading experience and 3 out of 5 stars. And finally in October I read a poetry collection, and that was I Am Not Your Final Girl by Claire C. Holland. I actually read this one on my Kindle, but I was halfway through reading it and realised I needed to own it because I freaking loved it, so I immediately hopped onto Amazon and ordered it and then finished off the rest of the book on my Kindle. But this one is a collection of poetry all about final girls from modern day cinema, so from horror films from the 1970s to now, I believe. Each poem is based on a different final girl, but in these poems they are a feminist twist on these final girls, giving them lots more power, lots more agency and more of a voice. So the back actually puts it perfectly. Follow your favourite final girls of horror film on a journey of mayhem and retribution. From the white picket fences of 1970s Haddon unveiled to the apocalyptic end of the world as we know it. Watch as these vicious vixens slash and hack the creeps out of their way in a fight for survival and a better tomorrow for all of womankind. They're sick and tired of being harassed, abused and beaten down by the man. They're not going to take it anymore. I absolutely love this poetry collection. I think it is my favourite poetry collection I own so far. I am trying to build a little collection down here, but I freaking love this one. I am a huge horror movie fan, so that probably helped in my enjoyment of this. A lot of the poems were about horror films that I have seen, and actually my favourite one was about the film The Witch and the final girl in that, who is called Thomasina. If you've seen that movie, you'll know it's a very strange one, but it is definitely an amazing feminist movie. And I just thought Claire C. Holland wrote her poem so perfectly. I mean, there's so many amazing poems in this, but that was definitely one that really stuck out for me. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, would highly recommend. But that is it for my October wrap up. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know what you read in October, what your favourite book was for October, maybe what your least favourite book for October was. If you did make it to the end of this video, pop the knife emoji down below for obvious reasons, just to let me know that you made it to the end of this video and that you enjoyed your time here. But as always, if you did enjoy the video, please do give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe for more bookish content from me. Comment down below with any of your thoughts and feelings. I do reply to every single comment. I love you all, and I will see you in my next one.